The VCARB01 is officially here. We have the car and we have this beautiful, slick, and to me, a very classic livery. Looks like they really stuck by what they said. They're going back to that Toro Rosso style with that beautiful purple and the silver bulls. Man, this car is looking beautiful and it really sets the scene on our grid. But there is a lot to dive into here and major changes the team has made to the car that I think are going to give us some hints on the new Red Bull car, but also you can see where the inspiration definitely comes from. So let's go over it and everything you need to know about the VCARB01. If you're new here, please make sure you're subscribed. Go ahead and like, it would mean the world. You guys are the best. So let's get into the VCARB01. So as I said, let's start off from the front wing, make our way to the back of the car. And there's so many things to notice just from this frontal picture. But let's talk about the front wing itself first. So looking at the front wing, they have changed the shape of the nose, very Aston Martin-like. They didn't have the same shape before. And as you can see at the very bottom of that nose cone on the front wing, they've kind of divided the air, splitting it, going both to the right side of the front wing and the left side of the front wing. Before they had the whole entire nose connecting all the way to the bottom of the front wing. But as well, they've changed the outwash part, very Mercedes-like on this front wing and that outer part on those end wing plates. But also, the way that the front wing is shaped is different to what they had last year in the way that that upper flap is shaped with its beautiful color scheme. I really love the look of this car. I think it looks very outstanding, very impressed. Also, you can see it on the front nose towards the bottom as well. You can see that it's getting split from the right to left side as well, trying to put that balance into the car. But another really big feature to this car is they have a pull rod front suspension. As we suspected, they picked up on what the RB19 had, and now they are running both a rear and a front suspension from the Red Bull team. Before, they were going very ambitious. They wanted to do their own thing for the car, the Faenza style, but now that they're pretty much in Milton Keynes with that wind tunnel working with Red Bull, they have finally decided to adopt exactly what the RB19 had. And I really think this is going to be a big boost for this team because adding that pull rod suspension that is innovated by Adrian Newey will allow for the base of the car to drop even more and maybe get them into that window that they were missing in the 2023 season. That was a big thing they talked about. They said the base of the car couldn't be low enough, so they had a constant issue on setup going into the race and struggling from that end. So now adding a pull rod suspension, especially innovated by practically the king of aero, it's going to be something else. It's definitely something to look into. Also from this frontal view, you can see that the side pod shape has changed. Very Red Bull-like, but not to that extreme level. It's very close to what we had in Baku on the side pod inlet shape, but still pretty extreme. So let's go to the side of the car now. And looking at it from this kind of angled look, you can see the difference in that side pod. They also previewed the floor, and you can also still see that little bump that comes out of the car from the chassis shape and where that side impact structure is. It's still not very Red Bull-like. The undercut in this car isn't as severe as I thought it would be. I don't know if this is because it's a render and they haven't actually changed that part, or they were pretty content with that because the actual side pod shape itself and undercut is not severely different with the exception of the inlet, but there are little parts that we can go over, and from the side view, you can see it, but on a better side view, which will be up on the screen right now, you can see more of what I'm talking about. Now the floor edge, pretty similar to before. You still see the other part of the side impact structure into the floor integrated like every other team pretty much has. As you can see, the actual simplicity between the engine cover and the side pod is pretty simple. It's not really much to it, but a lot of teams go down this route, and obviously it's a downwashing side pod. They've continuously had that, and they have that double splitter in its side pod to pull out some outwash on that side pod, just like Red Bull has it, but they had this last year. These are all things that have been onto the car. The engine cover is slightly different to what they had before, and the actual shark fin on that engine cover is just the slightest bit different. You can see the cutout in the rear wing. This is also something that they've already had on the car, but they added to their rear wing that I don't remember. On the rear wing, the side, the air that's getting pulled over from the top of the tire is also going through that little winglet part that they have on the side. I will show that a little bit closer for you guys. And they've changed parts of their halo that we can visibly tell here as well. They've added a couple more winglets onto there towards the end, more towards the engine cover. but also hitting it frontal facing, they have changed some of those parts that they didn't have on their previous predecessor. Looking at the actual rear view of the car, you can tell a few things from here. A couple big things that I want to note that the rear really shows off for this car. So first of all, the rear wing has changed. It's not as fat as it used to be. They've skinnied it out. Those wing end plate cutouts are pretty severe. They did have it last year too. It was very, I would say pretty much cut out as much as it possibly can to shred as much drag as possible and cause those vortices towards the back of the car because of the way that it's set up. Mercedes started this trend. Aston Martin then went on to it. A lot of teams have developed this, and it's going to be a continuous trend throughout the whole entire season. It's a more straight edge top. AlphaTauri was running this last year, and now this Racing Bulls team has it as well. You can also see that the beam wing is very similar to that of the RB19 when they weren't running that one beam wing with the other one set up in somewhere in the middle of the rear wing. When they have that double beam wing setup, very similar to that RB19. But a few big changes is you can see that there's a bigger gully on the side of the side pods. You can specifically see that in this view for this car, and that the engine cover itself has thinned out. So they probably improved the actual cooling package on the inside, and the actual engine cover itself pulling back to the beam wing itself is not as big as it used to be. It used to be a lot more reliant on the cooling, and it was a very draggy car. They never had that straight line speed that the sweet Red Bull could always pull out. So they've probably put in a lot of work on the interior packaging of this car. I know that is a big thing that was being talked about with the car, that there were a lot of limitations because of what they had before. Now, with the rear suspension, we don't really have to talk about it. It's the same rear suspension from Singapore. They're now using, as I said, that RB19 setup with their own chassis. The biggest things to note with this car is that they've kept that chassis side pod design. I do think this is only for the renders. I don't think we're actually going to visibly see this on the car when it comes out in Bahrain. The side pod inlet, as I said, has changed for more of a undercut in the front of the car, but towards the actual side, they kept that hump, so that interests me. The floor is the same one that you've seen in Singapore, or the last floor they actually ended up using in Abu Dhabi. So there's not much to go over there. They still have that floor edge of the three little splitters in the floor edge, and still very simplified. I think it's going to look much different as we go to there. They have it being pulled up into the actual rear part of the car as well. But their biggest changes on the car is definitely that front wing and the actual side pod inlet itself. But towards the back of the car, you can see the more deeper gullies on the car to give it more rear downforce, but the engine cover being thinned out due to a probably better cooling package on the inside of the car, but as well as the car hopefully hoping to shred more drag through it not being as big of a car as it used to be. These are all positive signs. I really do think this is a team to look out for, whether that be a good or a bad thing because they're now closer with Red Bull. It's going to be something to tell. The race suits look beautiful. I think the car looks awesome too. Probably my favorite livery we've seen so far. I mean, it's hard to knock a livery that's so beautiful, and it reminds me of a classic livery. It just got that, it's got that beautiful touch to it. So I'm very happy with this car, and it is time for me to go to bed. It's very late over here, and I got to get up early in the morning. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.